I'm John Buchanan. Now, as you know, if you've watched this channel recently, I'm a fan of the new studio piano instrument. And what we're going to do in this video is to take the pianos that exist within that instrument and to do something quite interesting with them, the sort of things that we actually hear in film score and television score a lot. This idea that effectively, in addition to pianos providing us with the opportunity for melody and harmony, they can also provide really interesting kind of propulsive patterny sequences. Now, I suppose I'm taking inspiration from some of the pianos that are made by third-party libraries, Una and Noire, both of which are Native Instruments libraries, and the Stratus library that Oliver Arnold's made for Spitfire audio. This idea that what we can do is to create patterns of notes, and what we're going to do is to recreate the kind of effect that those plugins can have within Logic to make something completely unique of our own. So what I've done is to select the studio piano, and I'm going to create a brand new track for it. And here is that interface again. What I'm also going to do is to just open up the transport bar at the top here. And I think a tempo of around 100 beats per minute would be good. Although 2 more is always a good thing, isn't it? So there we are. Okay, so we've got our piano. And this is the Studio Grand 1 mic piano. This isn't my favorite piano within this library. The one that I particularly like is the vintage upright. So that's the one that I'm going to select. And what I'm also going to do is to just check out the different microphone sources, just to remind myself what they sound like. One thing that's so great about this particular plugin is we've got more than one mic'd up sound placement. So this is stereo mic A. Okay, and this is stereo mic B. I like this one. So I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to record this little phrase that I've got in mind. In fact, actually at that point it can repeat. So I'm going to leave this, I hope, sort of unquantized. We'll see whether or not that's going to work. What I'm going to do is just get rid of the last little thing that I played, and then we're in a position potentially just to repeat this first collection of phrases. So this little phrase starts on beat 3. So if I'm careful about how this works, and if I chop this on beat 3 here, and I chop it there, then I think we will be able to loop it. I'm going to just shorten any overlapping notes so they're out of the way, and then I think we'll be in a position just to have that happen a couple of times. So here is our phrase. It particularly helps if I copy it into the right location. So this is our melodic upright piano. Full name, including its middle name. So that's just going to happen twice round now. Are you falling asleep yet? Okay, well, let's really go there. You're going to be out like a light by the end of this video. What I'm going to do, I should speak more loudly. Yeah, awake again now. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that track. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the piano plugin again. And this time we will come back to the stereo mic A option, which is just the alternative way of that this microphone has, this piano has been mic'd up. Now, when I talk about propulsive pianos, let's just mute the original melodic upright piano for a second. What I really mean is patterns of notes that play rhythms that undulate and change and just provide syncopation and just sort of almost become a kind of version of a sort of melodic, harmonic, ambient click track, really. They provide the momentum that sits underneath maybe a piano line like this. And to begin the process of doing that, what I'm going to do is to create the root note of this track, which is C. I'm going to create a little syncopated pattern for this one note, which is going to play off against the click track, and I'm going to mute the original piano so we're just listening to this by itself. Let's just see where the rhythm takes me. Okay, so there's plenty of that. So effectively what I'm doing here is to play every third 16th note. So irrespective of where the bar lines come, I've just kept going with sort of 3/16th notes. And if you don't have a MIDI keyboard or you don't feel confident playing piano, that's fine. You could just draw these notes in. But one of the advantages of playing them is that, of course, now that timing is just a little bit wonky because, of course, I'm not, contrary to popular opinion, actually a metronome. Oh no, I get confused for one all of the time. But what I'm actually going to do is to put a loop around this. I am going to quantize these notes in 16ths, but what I'm also going to do is to retain half of my original timing by taking the quantized strength down to 50%. So some of the looseness of my playing will be retained. However, because I want to loop from this first point, I am going to quantize that first note by pressing Q. So that one's going to be absolutely bang in time. That sounds like this. Okay, so far, so straightforward. It's not that interesting, really. So what I really want to do is to start thinking about ways in which I could place these sounds or do something interesting with them from a kind of pattern perspective. And in particular, what I want to start with is the idea of effects processing. But rather than just diving into the regular kinds of effects we want, I almost want to kind of imagine this as a sort of modular circuit, a sound that I've recorded, which in some way can just sort of pass through a chain of effects. And to do that, I'm going to come into Pedalboard. So Pedalboard allows me to configure a number of different effect slots, one after another. The signal passes through them sequentially. And I would definitely like to start with something that feels like it has the potential to slightly reverse the audio signal which it's receiving. And this delay plugin has this excellent little reverse circuit up in the top right-hand corner. Now, to really hear the effect of this, what I'm going to do is to synchronize the time of the delay to quantize value. And I'm going to start with dotted eighth notes. Well, actually, that wouldn't be a great idea because that is the rhythm that I've actually played. So I'm going to come down to a quarter note instead, and this is going to sort of fill in the gaps between some of the notes that I've played. I don't think I'm going to need a lot of feedback. I don't think I'm going to need a lot of mix either. So I'm going to turn those down. But I do like the idea of a little bit of pitch flutter and maybe a little bit of dirt that's being added here as well. Let's have a listen. I like that. What I'm going to do is to send all of that part into a reverb as well. I'm going to do this via an auxiliary because this isn't going to be the only propulsive piano. It's so easy to say repulsive piano. I'm trying really hard not to, but I can't promise I won't at some stage. I'm going to come down into Space Designer. I'm going to come and find something appropriately warm. Let's come into the large spaces. Look at that. There's a warm hall. It's exactly where we want to be on a chilly evening. Okay, so there is our first little piano pattern. Now what I'm going to do next is to duplicate this part, which means it's going to pick up all of the pedalboard effects. I'm going to dive back into piano for a second. This time what I'm going to do is to come and find the mono mic for the same piano. Okay, now what I'm going to do this time is to record a different rhythm for this piano, a different note. And what I'm also going to do is to introduce the occasional octave offset as well. So rather than just sticking on the note that I've played so far, what we're going to do is to create a pattern which maybe just plays out over a couple of different octaves. So now we've got two pianos. You can see that I've taken the tremolo off that out of Pedalboard. I've also balanced the volume of them a little bit so that, I told you were falling asleep. My speaking voice sounds loud now, doesn't it? I feel like I should be whispering. Nevertheless, I won't. So what I've done is to take out tremolo. I have changed the delay to a forwards delay by reversing that button. And as a result of that, even though these pianos are kind of born of the same instrument, they've got different microphones. And they've got their own little place in the mix. Now that there are two of them, there is another thing we could do too, which is that I could open up the mixer on these, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the pan at the same time as holding down control, and I'm going to select stereo pan, and what I'm going to do is to slightly bias them to each side. Now, the advantage of stereo pan, as opposed to just the regular pan dial, is that really the pan dial, the regular pan dial, let me use this one as an example on our stereo output, is really a crossfader between the left and the right channel. In other words, if I pan hard left, all I'm going to hear is the sound that's on the left-hand channel, and the right-hand channel is going to disappear from the mix completely, and the same thing is true if I come across to the right-hand side. Whereas stereo pan takes the whole of the signal, left and right, and it allows you to offset it. So effectively, it will preserve volume balance better, and actually, I think it sounds a little bit more natural. It's particularly useful if you've got a sound within your mix that is wide from a stereo perspective, and by panning it the way that it isn't wide, you don't suddenly lose loads of volume. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so we've got two pianos. Always room for one more. So what we're going to do is to duplicate this another time, but this time I'm going to change piano. So even though I don't love the studio ground and the concert ground, what I am going to do is to choose the one mic version of this. So the slightly more mono thing. And again, this is just going to give us a slightly different flavor. What I might do, if my sustain pedal is around, which it is bring in a little bit of my sustain pedal to get some of this rumble into this as well. And I'm also going to introduce a little bit more key noise, a little bit more release sample noise. So we just kind of make this a little bit more tactile and a bit closer. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to repeat the idea of just recording this completely on its own, away from the other ones. I don't want to be too influenced by those other rhythms, but what we're going to do is to, again, introduce a couple of kind of multi-octave moments, and we'll see where this takes us. What am I going to do? I don't know. Now, there is a bit of magic in that, isn't there? Let's be honest. I think that really is quite nice. Just wonder about one other thing. I'm going to take this pattern here, the most recent one that I've recorded. I'm going to add Logic's Arpeggiator. I'm going to introduce some variation across a couple of octaves, and I'm going to slow the rate right down to a dotted quarter note. And let's see what that sounds like. Just this last pattern. I think that's quite beautiful. What I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to have these repeat pretty at random. But the one thing I am going to do on this first piano pattern, which is our repeating C, this note feels a little bit insistent to me. So what I'm going to do is to create, without thinking about it too hard, a few little volume undulations in it. So it just kind of comes and goes a little bit. I say I'm not going to think about it too hard. Would a 2-bar structure be a good idea? Well, it's a bit boring to make it that linear, isn't it? So let's just not do that. Resist. Jono, resist. And I'm going to have this automation just ebb and flow wherever it feels like it should go. And that rhymes, and that feels appropriately poetic. Okay, let's put it in with the main piano and see how this feels. In fact, before I do that, I know you feel like I teased that and now I'm not going to deliver it. It feels very likely that these propulsive pianos are going to drown out the original melody ones, so I'm going to track stack them. That is the verb, to track stack. And I'm going to name them carefully, and it feels like they'd be much better if they were a sort of green colour, and if the original piano was an appropriate piano colour. And what I might do as well is to put a bit of compression on the original piano, just so it stands out a little bit too. And in fact, actually, compressing pianos is always quite nice because you get a kind of flavour from them that just kind of somehow accentuates the noises in them as well as the actual part itself. So I'm going to compress this pretty hard, actually, and then we'll add some gain and see what fits from a volume perspective. Okay, let's have a listen to that. Don't hit the velocity too hard, otherwise it sounds rubbish. So what we've got here is this kind of approach which we're hearing in lots of kind of tools made for contemporary score. This idea that the piano can be this amazingly wonderful melodic thing, capable of driving the emotional sort of needs of a particular scene. But it's also capable, if we think about it in a different way, of being this amazingly beautiful, propulsive, undulating, rhythmic thing, which is all over the place when you listen to film and TV score at the moment. And so if you're interested in trying to write with resources like this, absolutely check out the potential of Studio Piano, but also think about it in this sort of context because there's real magic here, I think.